Have you ever wondered what really happened in the Garden of Eden? Could the story of Adam and Eve be hiding secrets you were never told? Get ready to uncover hidden truths and surprising revelations that might change the way you see one of humanity's most fascinating accounts. Since the dawn of time, the story of the Garden of Eden has captured the imagination of countless generations. But why does this ancient tale continue to resonate so deeply? Is it merely a fable about the origins of humanity, or does it hold profound truths hidden beneath its surface? Today, we'll journey beyond the well-known narrative to uncover the secrets that have been buried for centuries. By the end of this video, you may see this story, and perhaps even yourself, in an entirely new light. The account of the Garden of Eden isn't just a story, it's a cornerstone of human history, shaping the moral and spiritual frameworks of billions. But it's also shrouded in mystery. Why were Adam and Eve forbidden to eat from a specific tree? What role did the serpent truly play? And what deeper meaning lies in their expulsion from paradise? These questions have puzzled theologians, historians, and curious minds for generations. To understand the mysteries hidden in the Garden of Eden, we must first revisit the foundation, the traditional story as presented in the book of Genesis. At its core, this narrative is simple yet profound, detailing the creation of humanity, their role in a perfect paradise, and the moment that changed everything. But what exactly does this story tell us, and how much of it have we taken at face value? The story begins with God creating the world in 6 days, culminating in the creation of Adam, the first man, formed from the dust of the ground and given life through the breath of God. Soon after, God places Adam in the Garden of Eden, a paradise filled with every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. Among these trees, however, two stand out, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's here that the plot thickens. Adam is given a clear command: he may freely eat from any tree in the garden except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The consequence of disobedience: death. Later, God creates Eve from Adam's rib, a companion to share in the stewardship of this idyllic world. For a while, all is well. But as we know, paradise doesn't last. Enter the serpent, a creature described as more cunning than any other. It tempts Eve, questioning God's command and suggesting that eating the forbidden fruit won't lead to death but rather to enlightenment, making them, like God, knowing good and evil. Succumbing to curiosity and desire, Eve eats the fruit and shares it with Adam. Their eyes are opened, and they realize their nakedness, a moment of profound transformation and loss of innocence. When God confronts them, the consequences are severe. Adam and Eve are cast out of Eden, condemned to toil and suffering, while the serpent is cursed to crawl on its belly. The gates of paradise are closed, guarded by cherubim and a flaming sword, ensuring no one can return to the tree of life. This story, as it is traditionally understood, serves as a foundational narrative for many cultures and religions. It explains the origin of human suffering, the concept of free will, and the need for redemption. But while this account is familiar, it leaves many questions unanswered. Why were Adam and Eve created with the capacity to disobey? Was the serpent merely an antagonist, or something more? And what does the tree of knowledge truly represent? These questions hint at deeper layers of meaning within the story, layers we will begin to explore in the next chapter. Could the Garden of Eden be more than a literal place? Could it symbolize the human condition, our struggles with temptation, and our quest for understanding? Let's take a closer look. The symbolism of the tree of knowledge, hidden revelations. One of the most enigmatic elements in the story of the Garden of Eden is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. At first glance, it might seem like just a forbidden object, a test of obedience. But as we peel back the layers, this tree reveals a treasure trove of symbolic meaning that resonates far beyond the confines of Eden. What if this tree was never about the fruit itself but about something far greater, the very essence of human consciousness and free will? Let's start with what the tree is called, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This isn't just a poetic name, it's a direct reference to the human ability to discern, to choose, and to make moral judgments. Before Adam and Eve ate its fruit, they lived in a state of innocence, untouched by the complexity of choice. The act of eating from this tree wasn't merely disobedience, it was an awakening, a crossing of a threshold from pure instinct into self-awareness. Many theologians and scholars view the tree as a representation of free will. God could have created humanity as obedient automatons, incapable of questioning or choosing differently. Instead, the presence of the tree suggests that free will was always part of the design. But why? Perhaps it was because true love, devotion, and growth can only exist when there's a choice involved. In that sense, the tree becomes a symbol not of restriction, but of potential, both for greatness and for failure. This interpretation aligns with similar symbols found in other cultures. In Greek mythology, for example, Pandora's box, or jar, serves as a similar catalyst for the human experience. Opening the box unleashed all manner of woes upon the world but also brought hope, a duality that mirrors the knowledge of good and evil. Likewise, in Norse mythology, the world tree, Yggdrasil, connects all realms of existence, embodying life, wisdom, and the balance of forces. Beyond mythology, the tree also resonates with the idea of spiritual growth and enlightenment. In many Eastern traditions, trees symbolize wisdom and interconnectedness. The act of eating the fruit could be seen as a metaphor for seeking deeper understanding, even when that understanding comes with consequences. But there's another layer to consider. Was the tree's prohibition truly about protecting Adam and Eve, or was it a necessary step in humanity's development? Some interpretations suggest that God's warning, "You will surely die," was less about physical death and more about the inevitable loss of innocence and the entrance into a more complex, morally ambiguous world. In this view, the tree becomes less a forbidden object and more a rite of passage. From a modern perspective, the story of the tree invites us to reflect on our own lives. How often do we face choices that seem forbidden or dangerous but hold the potential for growth? The fear of the unknown, the allure of what's out of reach, these are universal experiences. The tree, in this sense, is a mirror, reflecting our struggles with temptation, curiosity, and the consequences of our actions. And yet, this is just the beginning. If the tree of the knowledge of good and evil symbolizes free will and self-awareness, what does the tree of life represent? Is it the opposite, eternity and divine connection, or something that complements the knowledge gained from the first tree? As we explore the next chapter, we'll unravel the role of another mysterious figure in this story, the serpent, whose involvement shifts the narrative in a dramatic way. The role of the serpent, ally or enemy? No figure in the story of Eden has sparked more debate than the serpent. Slithering into the narrative with cunning words and a tantalizing offer, the serpent has been labeled everything from Satan incarnate to a misunderstood symbol of wisdom and transformation. But what if its true role is far more complex than we've been taught? Is the serpent an enemy, leading humanity astray, or could it be an ally, provoking growth and awakening? Let's begin with what the serpent does. It speaks. In the ancient world, animals rarely had a voice in sacred texts, making this serpent unique. Its ability to communicate suggests intelligence, agency, and purpose. It doesn't simply tempt Eve with vague promises, it challenges her understanding of God's words, planting the seed of doubt. Did God really say? Is the serpent's opening line, a question designed to provoke thought rather than blind obedience. For many, the serpent has traditionally been seen as a villain, a deceiver who brought sin into the world. This interpretation is largely influenced by later Christian theology, where the serpent is equated with Satan, the adversary of God. Yet, in the original Hebrew text of Genesis, there is no direct mention of the serpent being Satan. It is described simply as, more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. This leaves room for alternative interpretations. In some ancient cultures, serpents were revered as symbols of wisdom, healing, and transformation. The serpent shedding its skin became a metaphor for rebirth and renewal. Even in the Bible, the serpent is not always portrayed negatively. In the book of Numbers, a bronze serpent crafted by Moses is used as a tool for healing, and Jesus later refers to it as a symbol of salvation, John 3 verses 14 to 15. Could it be that the serpent in Eden represents something more nuanced, a force of challenge and change? One theory suggests that the serpent acts as a catalyst for humanity's evolution. By encouraging Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge, it pushes humanity toward self-awareness, moral responsibility, and the ability to discern good from evil. Without the serpent's intervention, Adam and Eve might have remained in a state of innocent ignorance, incapable of truly understanding their purpose or potential. In this view, the serpent isn't an enemy, it's a necessary agent of growth. Others, however, argue that the serpent's actions were inherently deceptive. While it promised that eating the fruit would make Eve like God, knowing good and evil, it omitted the consequences, shame, suffering, and exile from Eden. This omission leads many to see the serpent as a symbol of temptation, embodying the human tendency to seek short-term gains without considering long-term costs. But what if the serpent's dual nature, both deceiver and enlightener, mirrors the complexities of human choice? In life, the challenges we face often come with both risks and rewards. A difficult decision might lead to hardship, but it can also bring growth and deeper understanding. The serpent's role in the story forces us to confront this duality, the tension between fear and curiosity, obedience and independence, comfort and growth. There's also the question of the serpent's true identity. Some traditions, particularly in Gnostic texts, view the serpent as a liberator, offering knowledge that was deliberately withheld by an authoritarian god. These interpretations flip the traditional narrative, portraying the serpent as a hero who seeks to empower humanity. While this view is controversial, it highlights the richness of interpretations surrounding this enigmatic figure. From a psychological perspective, the serpent could represent the inner voice of doubt or curiosity that resides in all of us. It's the whisper that asks, "What if?" and pushes us to explore the boundaries of our understanding. While this voice can lead to mistakes, it can also lead to breakthroughs. The serpent, in this sense, becomes a symbol of our inner conflict, the struggle between staying safe and taking risks. The serpent's presence in the story also raises questions about God's intentions. If God is all-knowing, then the serpent's role must have been part of the divine plan. Was the serpent a test, a tool, or even a necessary part of humanity's journey toward maturity? This question doesn't have an easy answer, but it invites us to think deeply about the interplay between free will, temptation, and divine sovereignty. As we consider the serpent's role, it's clear that this figure is far more than a one-dimensional villain. It embodies complexity, duality, and the challenges of human existence. And yet, the story wouldn't be complete without its central figures, Adam and Eve. Who were they really, historical individuals, archetypes, or something else entirely? Let's turn our focus to the first humans and uncover what their story reveals about us. Adam and Eve, characters or universal representations. 1000 words. Adam and Eve, the first humans created by God, are central to the story of Genesis. They're often portrayed as historical individuals, the first man and woman to walk the earth. But beneath the surface, their narrative carries layers of symbolism that resonate far beyond a literal interpretation. Are they unique characters, or do they represent something universal about the human condition? Let's begin with their creation. Adam is formed from the dust of the ground, and Eve from Adam's rib, a detail that has sparked countless discussions about their connection and interdependence. On a literal level, this creation story speaks of God's power to bring life into existence. But symbolically, Adam and Eve's origins suggest a deep truth, humanity's unity and shared essence. Eve's creation from Adam emphasizes relationship and partnership, reflecting the idea that humans are incomplete without meaningful connection. From a psychological perspective, Adam and Eve can be seen as archetypes. Adam, whose name means man or humanity, represents all of us, our potential, our struggles, and our relationship with the divine. Eve, often associated with life and nurturing, symbolizes the aspects of humanity that bring growth, creation, and change. Together, they embody the balance of human existence, reason and emotion, strength and vulnerability, independence and interdependence. One of the most profound aspects of Adam and Eve's story is their shared responsibility. When they eat the forbidden fruit, their eyes are open to good and evil, and they become aware of their nakedness. This moment isn't just about disobedience, it's about the dawning of self-awareness. They realize the weight of their choices and the consequences of their actions. In this sense, Adam and Eve represent the journey of every human being from innocence to maturity, from ignorance to the complex reality of free will. But why did they fall? Traditional interpretations often blame Eve for being deceived by the serpent and leading Adam astray. This view has influenced societal attitudes toward gender roles for centuries, painting women as inherently weaker or more susceptible to temptation. However, a closer reading reveals a shared culpability. Adam was present during the encounter with the serpent, yet he chose to eat the fruit as well. The story isn't about one gender being more at fault than the other, it's about the shared human tendency to make flawed choices. Modern interpretations challenge us to rethink the dynamics of the story. Rather than focusing on blame, we can see Adam and Eve's actions as a necessary step in humanity's growth. By eating the fruit, they move beyond a state of passive obedience and enter a world where they must grapple with morality, relationships, and the consequences of their decisions. In this light, their fall becomes less of a failure and more of an evolution, a transition from childhood to adulthood. Another layer of interpretation lies in their names. Adam comes from the Hebrew word Adamah, meaning ground or earth, emphasizing humanity's connection to the physical world. Eve derives from Chava, meaning life or living, highlighting her role as the mother of all humanity. Together, their names reflect the dual nature of human existence. We are both grounded in the material and called to bring forth life and meaning. In exploring Adam and Eve's story, it's impossible to ignore the broader themes of equality and responsibility. The phrase, "bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh," suggests that Adam and Eve are equals, partners in the truest sense. Their roles in the narrative don't diminish this equality but highlight their unique contributions to the human story. Adam's role as caretaker of the garden and Eve's role as the mother of all living things are complementary, not hierarchical. The story also raises profound questions about guilt and redemption. After their disobedience, Adam and Eve hide from God, ashamed and afraid. This moment captures a universal experience, the fear of facing the consequences of our actions. Yet, even in their guilt, God provides for them, clothing them with garments of skin. This act of grace foreshadows the possibility of redemption, a theme that runs throughout the Bible. Finally, Adam and Eve's story connects deeply with modern struggles. Their journey reflects our constant tension between following rules and forging our own path, between living in harmony with others and asserting our individuality. Their choices remind us that mistakes are inevitable but also that growth often comes through failure. In their story, we see the challenges and beauty of being human. As we move forward, let's consider the lasting impact of Eden, not just as a physical place but as a spiritual idea. How does this ancient narrative shape our understanding of sin, redemption, and our relationship with the divine today? The spiritual impact of Eden, a message for today. The story of the Garden of Eden is much more than a distant event in human history, it's a profound narrative that continues to shape our understanding of the world, ourselves, and our relationship with God. When we look at Adam and Eve's time in Eden and their eventual fall from grace, we are not merely looking back at a mythic past. We are engaging with powerful lessons about human nature, morality, and the search for purpose. These lessons resonate with us today, in the midst of our daily struggles, choices, and spiritual journeys. One of the most significant spiritual themes in the Eden narrative is the concept of sin and its consequences. Before their disobedience, Adam and Eve lived in a state of innocence and purity. They were untainted by knowledge of good and evil. But once they ate from the tree of knowledge, their eyes were opened, and they became aware of their nakedness. This act of disobedience marked the beginning of human separation from God. It was the first moment when humanity chose self-reliance over divine guidance. The consequence of this choice was the loss of innocence and the entry of suffering, pain, and death into the world. Today, the idea of sin often feels abstract or outdated, but the Garden of Eden teaches us a timeless lesson. Sin is not just about breaking rules, it's about the rupture of relationship. It's a distortion of the trust and harmony that God desires to have with humanity. When Adam and Eve chose to disregard God's command, they didn't just disobey a divine rule, they chose to sever the intimacy they had with their Creator. In our own lives, sin is less about the action itself and more about the relationship it harms. Whether we are lying, stealing, or simply harboring resentment, the deeper consequence is the distance it creates between us and God, and between us and others. Yet, the story of Eden also provides a powerful message of grace. Although Adam and Eve's disobedience brought suffering and separation, God's actions afterward reveal something incredible. After they sinned, God could have simply left them to face the full consequences of their choices. Instead, He searched for them. He called out, "Where are you?" Genesis 3 verse 9, not because He didn't know where they were, but because He wanted them to come back to Him. Even in their shame and guilt, God made garments of skin for Adam and Eve, providing for them despite their failings. This act of grace points to the broader narrative of redemption that unfolds in the Bible. Just as God provided clothing for Adam and Eve, He later provides a path to reconciliation through Christ. This message of grace is a central theme of Christianity and is echoed throughout the Scriptures. Another profound spiritual truth from Eden is the idea of free will. In Eden, Adam and Eve were given the ability to choose. They were free to obey God or to turn away. This freedom is a core aspect of human existence. It's what allows us to love, to grow, and to shape our own destinies. But with that freedom comes responsibility. The choices we make have real consequences, and we must live with the outcomes of those choices. Yet, this freedom also allows us to return to God. The story of Eden reminds us that, though we may stray from God, we always have the option to return, because He's always calling us back. Eden also speaks to the deeper longing within all of us for purpose and meaning. Before their fall, Adam and Eve had a unique purpose: to care for the Garden of Eden and to live in harmony with God and each other. The narrative suggests that our deepest fulfillment comes not from independence or self-sufficiency, but from living in relationship with God and fulfilling the role He has designed for us. In the modern world, where so many search for meaning in career, wealth, or achievement, the Eden story challenges us to reconsider what truly satisfies the soul. The peace and joy that Adam and Eve enjoyed in the garden were rooted in their connection to God, and in this same way, we find our greatest peace and joy when we align our lives with His will. As we move forward in life, it's easy to lose sight of these deeper truths amidst the noise of everyday life. We often forget that, just like Adam and Eve, we are faced with choices every day, choices that determine the quality of our relationship with God, our sense of purpose, and our ability to experience true joy and peace. The Garden of Eden reminds us that while we may stray, redemption is always within reach. God's grace is extended to us even in our darkest moments, and He continually invites us to return to the garden, both metaphorically and spiritually. So, how do these lessons from Eden apply to our lives today? How can we live in light of these truths? One answer lies in embracing our freedom while acknowledging the responsibility that comes with it. We must make daily choices that nurture our relationship with God, choosing trust over self-reliance, obedience over rebellion. This doesn't mean perfection, but rather a willingness to turn back to God whenever we fall short, knowing that His grace is waiting for us. Additionally, the story of Eden encourages us to seek meaning in the right places, not in material success or transient pleasures, but in a relationship with God that transcends the circumstances of this world. The more we grow in this relationship, the more we begin to reflect the peace, joy, and purpose that Adam and Eve once enjoyed in the garden. The spiritual lessons of Eden are not just ancient truths, they are living, breathing realities that speak to us today. Just as God called Adam and Eve to step out of hiding, He calls us to step into the light of His love and grace. Will we choose to respond? As we conclude our exploration of the Eden story, it's important to keep in mind that the journey doesn't end with the fall. The story continues with God's plan for redemption, a plan that begins with the very next chapter in Genesis and unfolds throughout the rest of the Bible. Eden may be lost, but its lessons continue to shape our lives and our relationship with God. Additional mysteries: what was left out of the official narrative? When we delve deeper into the biblical story of the Garden of Eden, we encounter not only the well-known account in Genesis but also the gaps and mysteries that the text leaves unanswered. These open spaces have been the subject of speculation, debate, and exploration for centuries. From ancient writings that offer alternative or expanded versions of the Eden story to the subtle clues left within the text itself, there is much more to the tale of Adam and Eve than what is presented in the canonical Bible. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Eden story is the absence of detailed accounts about what happened after Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden. We know that they had children, Cain and Abel, and later Seth, but the Bible doesn't provide much detail about their lives in the years following their banishment. What happened during their time outside of Eden? Were they truly alone, or did they encounter other beings or civilizations? Some ancient texts and traditions suggest that there might have been more to the story than we are told in Genesis. One of the books of the Bible that hints at the missing pieces of the Eden narrative is the Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish text that was not included in the traditional biblical canon. This book expands on the Genesis account and offers additional details, such as the names of Adam and Eve's daughters and the lengths of their lives. The Book of Jubilees also speaks about the early life of Adam and Eve after their expulsion from Eden, suggesting that they lived for many years and that their story was much more complex than the brief account in Genesis. It paints a picture of a humanity that was far more connected to divine wisdom than often recognized. Similarly, some early Christian writings, such as those from the early Church Fathers, point to a more expansive understanding of the fall and its consequences. These writings often emphasize the spiritual significance of Adam and Eve's sin in ways that go beyond the standard view of disobedience. They argue that the fall was not just about breaking a rule but about opening the door to knowledge that was too advanced for humanity at that stage of its development. The idea that Adam and Eve were too innocent to comprehend the full depth of the knowledge they gained is one that has been explored in apocryphal texts and other traditions. One particularly interesting example of this is the Life of Adam and Eve, an apocryphal text that delves into the aftermath of the fall. This text, also known as the Apocalypse of Moses, gives a detailed account of the lives of Adam and Eve after their expulsion from the garden. In this version, Adam and Eve experience immense sorrow for their sin and their separation from God. They engage in acts of repentance, and Adam is even shown trying to atone for his mistakes through sacrifices. The text also suggests that they were aware of a greater cosmic plan for humanity, including the eventual coming of a Savior. While many of these stories were excluded from the canonical Bible, they offer valuable insights into the broader narrative of Genesis. Why were these stories left out? The exclusion of these writings could be due to theological or cultural reasons. For example, the Church Fathers may have found them to be too speculative or divergent from the traditional teachings they wished to promote. However, these texts provide a deeper, more intricate understanding of the spiritual journey of Adam and Eve and humanity's role in God's grand design. The mystery of the children of Adam and Eve is another subject that invites speculation. Genesis briefly mentions Cain, Abel, and Seth, but the question of who else populated the earth after Adam and Eve's expulsion is left largely unanswered. One interpretation that some ancient Jewish scholars suggested is that Adam and Eve may have had many other children who are simply not mentioned by name in the biblical account. The Book of Jubilees further expands on this by noting that Adam and Eve's offspring grew into a large family, yet it remains unclear who they intermarried with to form the first human communities. This gap in the narrative often leads to the question of whether there were other beings on earth at the time, or if human beings existed in parallel worlds of creation. Another area that raises questions is the true purpose of the Garden of Eden. While Genesis tells us that Adam and Eve were tasked with tending the garden, there is little explanation as to why this paradise was created in the first place. Was the garden meant to be a testing ground for humanity, a place where the choice between good and evil would be made clear? Or was Eden the ultimate ideal, a perfect state of existence that humankind was destined to fall from, so as to fulfill a larger divine plan? Various interpretations exist within Jewish, Christian, and Gnostic traditions. Some scholars suggest that Eden was not just a physical location but a spiritual state, and that humanity's eventual exile from it symbolizes a deeper fall from divine harmony into the material world. Additionally, the nature of the serpent in the Eden narrative continues to be a topic of much discussion. While the Bible traditionally depicts the serpent as a literal creature that tempts Eve into eating the forbidden fruit, many scholars and theologians have interpreted the serpent symbolically. In some traditions, the serpent is associated with wisdom and enlightenment rather than evil. This interpretation challenges the conventional view that the serpent was merely a malevolent figure, suggesting that the temptation might have been a test of Adam and Eve's readiness to handle the knowledge they would gain. What if the serpent was not an evil force, but a necessary element of humanity's spiritual growth? This idea, although controversial, appears in certain mystical interpretations of the Eden story. In this view, the serpent represents the awakening of human consciousness, a catalyst for the development of wisdom and understanding. While this interpretation does not negate the negative consequences of Adam and Eve's decision, it offers a more nuanced perspective on the fall. In conclusion, the story of the Garden of Eden is rich with untold mysteries and hidden meanings. The gaps in the biblical account invite us to explore deeper questions about humanity's origins, our relationship with the divine, and the choices that shape our lives. Ancient texts, mystical traditions, and theological interpretations all contribute to a fuller understanding of this foundational story. While the canonical Bible provides us with the core narrative, these additional writings and ideas challenge us to think critically about what is missing, and why. As we journey through the layers of the Eden narrative, we have uncovered a multitude of perspectives that enrich the original story of Adam and Eve. From the symbolic meanings of the tree of knowledge to the complexities surrounding the serpent, we've peeled back the veil on interpretations that have been hidden for centuries. But as we reach the end of our exploration, there's one key question left for each of us to ponder: what does the Garden of Eden mean for us today? The idea that Eden exists within us is not a new one, but it is one worth reflecting on as we draw conclusions from the story. While the physical garden was lost to Adam and Eve, many traditions suggest that the true essence of Eden, the state of perfect harmony with the divine, is something that lives within each of us. It's a state of being that we have access to, not by returning to a literal garden, but by reconnecting with our higher selves and the divine purpose that is ingrained in us all. When we examine the Eden story in this light, it transforms from a tale of punishment and exile into one of spiritual growth and personal awakening. Just as Adam and Eve were given the freedom to choose their path, so too are we presented with choices every day, choices that impact our connection to the divine and to the world around us. The fall from Eden is not just an ancient event, it is an ongoing process in each of our lives, as we navigate the balance between knowledge, freedom, and responsibility. It serves as a reminder that our choices matter, and with every decision, we move either closer to or further from the Eden-like state of peace, purpose, and divine alignment. This perspective invites us to think of the garden not as a lost paradise but as a metaphor for the inner state we are all capable of achieving. Through self-reflection, spiritual practice, and a deeper connection with the divine, we can re-enter the spiritual Eden that transcends time and space. The journey from the Garden of Eden, then, is not one of irreversible loss, but of potential redemption and restoration. As we wrap up our exploration, think about this: how does the story of Eden speak to your life today? What lessons from Adam and Eve's experience can you apply to your own journey of growth, understanding, and spiritual awakening? The narrative that has shaped much of Western thought for thousands of years is far more than just an ancient myth. It is a reflection of the ongoing human struggle between innocence, knowledge, and the choices we make along the way. So, as we close this chapter, I encourage you to reflect on the story of Eden, not as something that happened long ago, but as a living, breathing message for you right now. What is your Eden? And what steps can you take to reconnect with the deeper spiritual truths that lie within? If this video has sparked new thoughts and questions about the Garden of Eden and its timeless message, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking content. Let's continue exploring the mysteries of the Bible and the profound insights that lie hidden beneath the surface. See you in the next video.